I'm curious how you decided to end the book where you did. So I read it, if you will, in audio. So I didn't have a really good concept of where the end was because I wasn't monitoring it closely.
Audiobooks will sneak up on you like, wait, hold on. Whereas when you're reading a paper book, you can see, oh man, it's getting close. Or even a Kindle, it'll tell you, the percentage.
The percent.
That's one thing I hate about audiobooks is like all of a sudden there's like music creeps up and you're like, wait, what? No.
But which is exactly how I was. And yet, as I considered it, it's like, the writer side of me went, okay, that's a pretty cool place to leave it. Where the reader part of me went, hey, wait a minute. So did you always know you were going to kind of end it there? Or did you back up into that space during edits? Or
no, well...
Is that where the story just stopped for you as the pantser?
Spoiler alert. So, I mean, you know how when you're reading a book that you're really enjoying and you're getting to the end and that hand starts to squeeze your heart and you're like, oh, I don't want to leave this world, but it's time to leave this world. It's like the end of a vacation. I started to feel that way as I was writing it, and I knew that was where I needed to leave it.
Okay.
That's just, I mean, it was a total instinctual thing.
So I know when we were talking to set this up, you're working on the edits for your next book. Can you share a little about that?
It's funny, I'm not ready to talk about what it's about yet. I just tweeted today, like, I realized, oh, this book is about a teenage character who's, like, struggling with feeling other and trying to, deal with their with their identity issues. It's not, there's nothing about gender identity in it. It's all the main characters are neurodivergent, meaning they're dealing with mental wiring that's different than the typical people. As far as the plot and the setting, I'm not ready to pitch yet. I haven't even revealed the title yet, and the cover's not done yet. So I think I'm going to wait a little bit before I go into it. But I think if you liked Symptoms and you liked Riley and Solo and all those guys, there'll be something in the next book for you. It is a contemporary young adult.
Okay. Are you going to stay in young adult, the realm of young adult? Do you think, or?
Man, I think. Obviously, I owe one more book to Balzer and Bray HarperCollins, and that's a young adult novel. And then the big idea that's haunting me for the next one is a young adult. But at some point, I think I may extend my reach. I don't know. It's like I said, the books kind of come knocking on my door, so it's going to depend. I stumbled into young adult. I read. I mean, the novels that I loved are all considered young adult just before there was a shelf called young adult. So I kind of stumbled into that because I think the teenage years are where you really start forming your adult identity, and the music that you loved and the books that you loved. But I think I have stuff to say that might not be targeted at young adults. It might just be Gen Pop.
That's a good term for it.
Gen Pop.
Registered trademark.
I think that's what they call people in prison that aren't in a specific ward, the Gen Pop.
Yeah. Well, rebranded for something for YA.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea when the book comes out, this next one? Does it have a date lurking out there on the calendar?
It'll be in 2017. If I meet my deadline in 5 days, it'll have a much better chance of coming out in the first half of 2017, but definitely in 2017. For sure. Hopefully in the first half to see that happen.
Yeah, I was really excited that I found your book in a Barnes & Noble in Santa Rosa. Just right there, face out on what to do in YA.
I have to... Barnes & Noble has been so great to my book, and I know that some of that is the machinery of publishing and publicity, but it's weird to think that Barnes & Noble is the last bookstore. It's the last bookstore, and when I was growing up in music, it was Tower Records. That's the place you went, and we start to think now of like, well, indie bookstores are dying, and there are amazing indie bookstores across the country. Not so much in the area where I live, though. So if you're a teenager in where I live, Barnes & Noble is where you go, and they've been really awesome to me in this book. I've done multiple events at Barnes & Noble. I'm doing a bunch in June. for their teen book festival, and it's just really cool to to be partnered with that. You get to walk into Barnes and Noble and see your book on the shelf. It's pretty cool.
But I'm particularly pleased to see that book on the shelf, because they're not always. You can't always find LGBTQ books that visible in Barnes and Noble.
Yes. Yeah.
And I also saw it. I was in New York recently, and I saw it in the bookstore that's inside the LGBT Center in New York.
That's awesome.
And since they have the center there, sees such a huge number of youth coming through there for various services, I'm glad it's sitting on that shelf that maybe they'll pick it up and perhaps see themselves presented in a book.
Yeah. Well, it's shelf space in retail is a whole different world. It's different than warehouse space in an Amazon distribution center in Roanoke. So I feel lucky to have that I didn't design anything that way. I just wrote the damn book, and my agent found the right people, and it ended up on that shelf. I will say this though, and it's funny, I've had other authors tell me not to say this in interviews, and so I've thought about it long and hard, and I just really need to be honest. I set out to write commercial fiction. I wanted to make a living being a writer. I did not want, I spent years and years and years as an actor and as a musician wallowing in obscurity, doing whatever whim struck me. And, I wasn't 19 when I picked up the pen and decided I wanted to be a novelist. And so, I want to say to writers out there, there's nothing shameful about wanting to be on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. It definitely directs the way and the kinds of things you write. And so here I was trying to write something really commercial, and this idea popped up, and I thought, this isn't commercial. This isn't something that's going to be, this is going to be a small press. Some small presses would be the best market for this, and that's not how it turned out. So the great thing is, you don't know what's commercial.
It's very true,
and nobody else does either. Everyone's guessing. So it's really weird that I set out to write commercial fiction, and then this idea relentlessly attacked me and wouldn't let me go.
Yeah, because it's certainly not commercial.
Yeah, if you sat down to write, what can I write that would sell a lot of copies? This probably wouldn't be the idea that you'd pursue. And yet, when people read it, they got excited about it. And so that's what you want to look for. Is if you're a writer and you're trying to create something, are you excited by it? Is it turning you on? Are other people getting turned on by it? Because I think about all the books that I read, 10 pages in, and I'm that first chapter of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I don't care if you're Ernest Hemingway. That first chapter is a hammer in your teeth, and you want to read the rest of that book. So there's no wonder it's so massively successful. But it's massively successful because it's like candy and glue and delicious, and it's substantial, which is why it's lasted so long. Same thing with the Harry Potter books. The things that last and have resonance, they can be commercial. They can.
Yeah,
they don't
absolutely.
have to be. And then there's Charles Baxter novels that are literature porn that they probably didn't earn out their advance, but you read that book and you just you finish it and you go, gosh, I feel so smart. And you love it, So something for everybody.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. For detailed show notes, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com.